Hello everybody, I am super excited to bring you today's video, one that I've been looking forward to doing for a long time, and one that I hope some of you have been looking forward to as well. You knew it had to be coming, right? Today we are going to talk about the 1995 adaptation of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, starring Jennifer Ehle and Colin Firth. I've actually been a little scared to review this one. It may sound surprising, but reviews of things I really love and have loved for a long time are some of the hardest ones to do. My thoughts are all over the place, like I know the material too well to organize a coherent review, and I can't possibly be objective either. I'll tell you at the start that this is one of my favorite period drama miniseries ever, and that pretty much rules me out as an unbiased critic. So this isn't so much of a review as a semi-organized collection of my not very objective at all thoughts on the 1995 adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. I first saw the miniseries when it aired in installments, or possibly reruns on A&E when I was very little and probably didn't understand a lot of what was going on. I just knew I liked it, and so did all of the other ladies in my family, and so I grew up in a home where this was frequently rewatched and quoted. It was most likely my first introduction to the costume drama, also to classic British literature, also possibly to the British accent, which according to some people I went around mimicking when I was little, but I don't know what they're talking about. If you're a fan from the old days, then you probably remember that this came in a boxed set of 6 VHS tapes, which we still have around here somewhere, I think. Why would we get rid of it? But each episode is 50 minutes, so the production is only 5 hours long. It was a pretty exciting day when we got the 2-disc DVD set, so we could watch one episode after another without having to stop and rewind the tape before continuing on. I confess that we don't watch it as often now as we used to. There are just so many other things out there that I want to see, and there's only so much time. But we never let more than a couple years go by before revisiting it, and it's always delightfully familiar. You say Pride and Prejudice adaptation, and this is the one I think of first. It's a great adaptation. It tells the story well, it's entertaining and funny, the sets and scenery and costumes and hair are all appealing, and the characters feel so real that you easily fall in with them. Possibly the best thing about it is the cast, and I'm not just talking about Mr. Darcy. I know one of the criticisms that gets leveled at this version is that all of the actresses playing the Bennet sisters are much older than their characters in the book. And you know what? They are. The only actress under 25 is Polly Maberly playing Kitty Bennet, and Jennifer Ehle is actually the second youngest in the group, not the second eldest. But that's never bothered me or hindered my acceptance that these 5 are sisters close in age. They act like sisters, they're lively, they squabble, they laugh together, they borrow each other's things, they talk over each other. Each one has her own distinct personality and gets little bits of development here and there. And of course, Lizzie and Jane have that special bond that sets them apart from the others. For me personally, and I know there are others who feel differently, that's fine, Jennifer Ehle embodies Elizabeth Bennet like no one else has. Her sense of humor, her independence, her merry enjoyment of a good joke, her sass, her energy, her concern for her family. The signature thing about her, I think, is the meaningful glances she shares with others. She speaks volumes with a twinkle of an eye or a little lift of an eyebrow, and this is pretty important, I think, since it's her fine eyes that first capture Darcy's attention. Does she run an awful lot? Yeah, I don't think Regency ladies were jogging about the countryside quite the way she does. But something about it fits the character here, and if it's a bit unconventional, well, while Elizabeth Bennet is never improper, she doesn't always embrace strict societal expectations either. As for the Bennet parents, well, I love them too.
May I have the carriage, Father? The carriage? No, indeed. You must go on horseback, for it looks like rain. Then you will have to stay the night. Mother!
Mrs. Bennet is over the top, and I'd hate to have her for my own mother, but from a safe distance, I adore her theatrics.
Now I have such tremblings and flutterings all over me, such spasms in my side and pains in my head and beatings at my heart that I can get no rest either night or day.
And I love the representation of the relationship between Lizzie and her father here, something I love in the book. Well, actually, do I love it in the book because I first loved it here? I don't know. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Anyway, he will forever be my favorite Mr. Bennet, whose character I find lovable in spite of all his weaknesses and flaws, and his last tender moment with Lizzie always makes my heart melt. And then, yes, there's Mr. Darcy, the role that Colin Firth will never be able to get away from. I prefer his Darcy, not because he's very attractive, although that helps, but because he gives the character so much more personality. He is stiff and proud, but he isn't a Johnny One-Note. He doesn't just look sullen and dour all the time. He's not a plank of wood that's been dragged to a party against its will. He emotes. Watch his performance, and you'll see flickers of annoyance, surprise, hurt, amusement. I think this is the way it should be. When I read the book again last year, I made note of just how much Darcy does express his emotions despite his reserve, and how often he smiles, which is a very rare thing in all of the adaptations. So rare that when he does smile, it's kinda weird. As for the rest of the cast, well, I don't want to keep you here talking about them all day, so let's do a lightning round. Mr. Bingley, could he get any nicer? Still, I don't feel like I know him very well. So much of his screen time is spent trying to get a word in edgewise, while some domineering woman holds the floor, poor guy.
I think...
I believe as you're in Hertfordshire.
Caroline Bingley. Oh, she plays this part so well. She's like a shark, relentlessly going around looking for blood in the water, a sure sign of easy prey for some thinly veiled snark. Mrs. Hurst. Oh my goodness, that high-pitched chortle of hers. So annoying.
Mr. Darcy, that's too cruel.
Mr. Hurst. Gross. What is his contribution to society? He must have a ton of money. Mr. Wickham. Ugh, I want to throw things every time he shows up on the screen.
Allow me to introduce my good friend,
Boo!
George Wickham.
Boo! Him and his little smirks. Always beware of the gallant ones if you're in an Austen story. Charlotte Lucas. Well played, Elizabeth's wonderfully wise, though overly pragmatic friend. She always knows what's what.
Mr. Darcy looks at you a great deal, Lizzie.
I cannot think why, unless he means to frighten me with his contempt.
Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins is a figure of fun in any adaptation, but while other Collinses have made me laugh, or cringe, or get angry, this unctuous Ichabod Cranian version is the one who succeeds most in doing all of the above every single time. Great performance. Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
What are you talking of? What are you telling Miss Bennet? I must have my share in the conversation.
Magnificent. I love the way she squints at Elizabeth. And this.
Are the shades of Pemberley to be thus polluted?
The Gardiners. The best aunt and uncle Gardiner ever. Two of the kindest, sanest, most good-natured people in the whole story. And I think it's hilarious that for years I had no idea that Mrs. Gardiner, Joanna David, is the mother of Amelia Fox, who plays Georgiana Darcy, who is sweet and innocent and the ideal ingenue. Oh, and I can't leave out Colonel Fitzwilliam, who is awfully charming and nice to not get at least a romantic subplot of his own. You know what? I even love the people who have minuscule parts in this, like the chatty housekeeper at Pemberley, Hill, the Bennet's sympathetic housekeeper, this older guy at the ball who always looks so nice, the friendly maid at the Lambton Inn, even this guy. But performances can only be so good unless they have a decent script, right? So how does this fare as an adaptation of the book? Well, I think it's pretty near perfect. Its length enables it to go into a lot of detail with characters and dialogue and plot lines, and there are a couple scenes from the book that are not included, but they're not ones that are so crucial that you're going to miss them a lot. Plus, this is one of those Andrew Davies adaptations, which means we get a lot of Austen's original material, but we also get a sizable helping of creative license. Davies' screenplay does take a few liberties with perspective, sometimes showing things that were only referred to in the book, things that Lizzie wasn't there to observe, and sometimes replaying a line but with a different intonation as Lizzie processes new information.
There's one lady I should be very loath to part from. There is one lady I should be very loath to part from.
Most of this extra stuff, though, let's be honest, is really an opportunity to add more Darcy, because the people who make these things had figured out at this point that their productions are much more warmly received if their main guy is hot and gets to do something that's very romantic or even sexy that maybe wasn't in the book. So we get things like the scene of a distracted Darcy doing some fencing as he tries to get over Elizabeth, and shortly after, yup, there's that scene where Darcy randomly decides to go for a quick swim in a murky pond, a scene that has reached legendary proportions and been parodied multiple times. But, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself here, what I think some of these parodies miss is that it's not the sight of Darcy standing there dripping wet in a white shirt that gets everybody excited. Well, maybe it is, but that's not what I think makes the scene so great. No, it's the wonderful awkwardness of this unexpected meeting between Darcy and Elizabeth when she was so careful to make sure that he was not going to be anywhere near his property while she went to tour it, because what could be more awkward than running into the guy whose marriage proposal you turned down, and at his own house of all places? Oh, I know what would make it more awkward. If he's all wet and not fully dressed.
Mr. Darcy?
Miss Bennet.
And then the poor guy stands there fumbling his way through polite questions, trying to make a good impression before his soggy escape, and then he finally goes and she's like, "Ugh, we gotta get out of here immediately." It's hilarious. But while that scene might be the one that everyone jokes about, another brilliant addition is a scene that comes shortly after, which I think my mom would agree is the best moment in the whole thing: the look.
Play with no one to turn the pages.
Lizzie has just smoothly rescued his sister from a painfully embarrassing moment, and her eyes slowly meet his over the piano, and for the first time, they connect. And they hold that gaze for a long time. If that doesn't make your heart rate go up just a little bit, I don't know, you might be dead. I think some credit should also be given to Carl Davis for his musical contribution. The soundtrack's classical style is appropriate for the time and incorporates a lot of motifs related to places, moods, and characters. My favorite is, inexplicably, the theme associated with Mr. Collins.
Thorn! Look who's coming! Who is it, Kitty? Mr. Collins, of course! Well, I'm not going to sit with him for anyone.
Are there parts that I don't like? No, not really. But there are some scenes that I don't exactly relish watching. I cringe my way through parts of episode 2, especially the Netherfield Ball, and I dread the proposal in episode 3. I just find it so excruciating to see Darcy so anxious, having no idea what a mess he's making. There are also a couple of weird things that I always wonder about, like why do so many of the main male characters have the same curly hairstyle? Was that a Regency thing, or just a 90s thing? Also, Darcy's floating heads. If there's anything that I don't like, it's the floating heads. This is a creative choice to show Darcy intruding on Lizzie's thoughts by having his face appear in midair as she remembers something he said. I get the message, but it's a little strange and I always giggle over it. But there really isn't anything I dislike about this adaptation, which is my favorite of all the Pride and Prejudices out there. Either it's just that good or I'm just so familiar with it, but these are my favorite versions of all the characters, and while I appreciate things about the other adaptations, for me, they don't hold a candle to this one. I hope you enjoyed this review. I do have a couple other Pride and Prejudice adaptations to discuss, 1980 and 2005, and then I will be moving on to another Jane Austen story, which is yet to be determined. I'd love to hear what you, my viewers, think of this miniseries. For a long time growing up, I didn't know anyone outside of my family who watched this, So I would be thrilled to hear from some fellow fans. What are your favorite scenes, favorite lines you love to quote? So go ahead and share your own thoughts below if you like. I look forward to reading them, and I'll see you again soon. The next video will be the next Jane Eyre adaptation comparison video, I promise. Until then, thanks for watching. Bye!
Shelves in the closet. Happy thought indeed.